Good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you are. It's Dave Michaels from Talking Points. Today we're going to be talking about CPaaS. I've got two CPaaS experts lined up here. About from the CPaaS Acceleration Alliance, and so let's get right to it. We've got Rob Kurver. Welcome, Rob.
Hi, Dave. Good to be here.
Good. I'm glad you're here. And we've got your cohort, Robert Galop. Welcome, Robert.
Dave, great to be here. Thanks.
All right. So let's start off with, I guess we should start off with some basic introductions. I've got your Twitter handles here, or X handles, whatever we're supposed to call this stuff. I don't even know anymore. But you're also active on LinkedIn, and you guys are both organizing an event coming up. We'll be talking about that. So we've got a lot of stuff to cover here. As I said, I'm Dave Michaels. And I'm with TalkingPoints.com. So we got all that stuff out of the way now. So the first question I want to get into here, I'm going to direct it right to Rob to get things going. What does CPaaS even mean anymore? I mean, it's like it's everywhere. Is there any vendor that's not a CPaaS provider? I mean, what's going on here?
Well, that's a great question, Dave. I think the way I look at it, CPaaS, I'm kind of literal. Communication platform. Everything is as a service, right? So that part's easy. Communication platform. So the way I look at it, and we look at it, the Alliance, is any kind of communication thingy that's somehow modular, programmable, got APIs, etc. So it could be messaging, omni-channel, could be contact centers, could be voice, could be, and yeah, you're right. Everything is morphing into a CPaaS. So a UCaaS without a bit of CPaaS is hard to imagine anymore. That's, I guess, what makes it interesting right now.
Well, I remember this happened on my watch, right? I guess yours too. But I remember when Twilio started and Jeff had this concept, and he must have explained it to me for 3 years straight, and I didn't fully get it, right? And I remember because we kept on talking about CPaaS, and he kept on he didn't like the term. He kept on saying, well, that's what you want to call it. They were just doing their own thing. They were calling it programmable. They were calling it other things at Twilio. And now, of course, there's a whole sector around CPaaS. Does anyone actually use the term themselves, Robert?
The dirty little secret I like to say is that you really, if you're going to succeed in the market, you don't talk about CPaaS, right? Everybody's
a good secret. Yeah.
Other pieces. And the truth of the matter is,
it's like Fight Club, right? It's like Fight Club.
Exactly. So the truth of the matter is, if you're an enterprise or if you're a customer of one of these enterprises, they don't care how you're delivering the service. They don't care how they're interacting with you. What they want to know is, can they get in touch with the right person? Can they do the things that they want to do? And back to your question of what the CPaaS even mean anymore, it's bringing all those things together, right?
And so I mentioned, everyone seems to be a CPaaS provider because a lot of companies are. I think more companies are than people realize, right? So we could talk about, Amazon's a CPaaS provider, but they don't call it CPaaS. They call it a SDK, the Chime SDK I'm referring to. I guess that's what Zoom does too. Zoom's more of an SDK play. Microsoft became a CPaaS player. I mean, a lot of companies that you may not think of are in this space now.
Yeah. I think it boils down to, let's say, that whole monolithic approach is kind of old-fashioned, right? You want to give people building blocks, and now it's all CPaaS.
Are there? Can you think? Okay. Oh, there he is. You disappeared, Mr. Kurver. Then he came back. Other companies, are most telecom carriers becoming CPaaS providers, or is there some definition of CPaaS where is it more than SMS? I mean, is there some sort of threshold that we should apply to the term?
Yeah, you've really got a mix, and again, it goes back to what use cases are you solving for? What are you doing for the customer? We issued our State of CPaaS report here earlier this year, and there's really 3 stages, right? You mentioned SMS, you mentioned APIs, and everybody likes to think about the Uber use case, which is, I can text with my driver. It's pretty exciting stuff, and back when Uber first came out, it was pretty groundbreaking, right? But now anybody can do that. And as we've progressed, we've started to get into, let's start to do some no code, low code stuff, right? So little drag and drop interfaces. Back in the early 2000s, Visio was great because you could drag and drop stuff, right? And we've now seen providers enable both in pure play CPaaS platforms and CCaaS platforms, UCaaS platforms, enable interactions with that drag and drop type of a thing. So you no longer need a developer to go back and code against an API, right? And now what we're starting to see is the progression into verticalized and specialized applications where you don't even have to think about the flows. What you're actually thinking about is, hey, I'm a doctor and I need to communicate with my patients, or I'm a small store owner and I need to be able to interact with my customers. And they've actually got really specialized applications built on top of that CPaaS stack. You're starting to see all these things to come together, which when you go back to what Rob was talking about at the beginning, you're starting to see this blend where it doesn't matter what you call it or where it's being provided from.
Okay. So I mentioned SMS. You mentioned things like Uber, where you could even call or text. I imagine video is part of the CPaaS stack. AI, does AI fit in the CPaaS stack?
If you ask Microsoft, definitely. So they make their AI part of ACS with an API, and it sort of connects. So yeah, I think AI is going to be a big part of CPaaS.
And then one of you mentioned contact center earlier. Where does contact center fit into the CPaaS story?
Okay, so this is interesting. Have you ever heard of Content Guru? They have a Storm platform, right? And it's on their website. It has been there for years. They call their platform Storm, and then they build a contact center as one of the applications on top. And I'm sure, I mean, you were there this year when Five9 sort of rebranded their tech line, and they're now calling themselves an intelligent platform for communications or for interactions or for customer something. So it's all becoming a platform. So I like to go back to this communication platform thing.
Yep.
And so are most CPaaS services you pay for usage type of model? Are there any exceptions to that?
That's certainly an older approach, right? As you look at programmatic communications, as Twilio used to like to call it, right? Developers are thinking about usage-based models, and it definitely has its place. But there's also areas where I want to be able to enable an agent, or I want to enable a certain type of customer interaction. So it really gets into a mix. Rob mentioned Content Guru. We've got other contact center providers as a part of our membership that they've got per seat licenses and other types of licenses that come in here. So it really is a mix, and it goes back to the use cases and what kind of challenges you're trying to solve.
So you mentioned you published a report. You mentioned your memberships. We haven't gotten to your alliance yet, but I'm going to get there in just a second. But I want to ask you a little bit more about this concept of CPaaS because I remember, for example, I remember when Vonage acquired Nexpo, which must have been, I don't know, 6 years ago, 7 years, I don't remember, a long time ago, that their stock actually went down. That it was an alien concept. Why would an application provider buy a CPaaS provider? And now, of course, it turns out that they were trend setting. It seems that most CCaaS and many UCaaS companies have expanded into CPaaS as well. And so you talked about Rob, names are so confusing. You've talked about programmability. And so it just seems like there's this natural balance between an application, let's say Amazon Connect, and a suite of programmability, which would be the Chime SDK, and how these work together. And that's kind of what Vonage has done too, and what Microsoft is doing. And so it's really being able to enhance those services, or in some cases like Twilio, forget the application, let's just give you all the tools you need to build one. So it's amazing to me how much this has matured. So now that it's matured and everyone can do one, here's the loaded question. How does wrong question. Here we go. How does an enterprise evaluate a CPaaS provider? If everybody offers SMS, and what should an enterprise be looking for when they're selecting a CPaaS partner?
You want to take that one? You want to start with that one, Rob, and I can.
Okay, I'll start with that one. I think it's an excellent question. I mean, the times of comparing the API and the feature set and the price per SMS, I mean, they're kind of gone. It's now more about the total package, right? And how a provider is helping an enterprise get to the next stage, basically. Could be a combination of capabilities. You refer to Microsoft with ACS. I mean, their feedback is a much higher level, right? Because you basically have the whole Microsoft tool set through APIs. It's different than getting SMS and maybe MMS. And the same for the contact centers. I just talked to Avaya this week, and they're looking at, let's say, resurfacing, right, after everything that happened these last couple of years, as a contact center with a CPaaS thing on top, but very elementary. I mean, it's very fundamentally part of the contact center experience, that flexibility layer. So how do you select that? I think it starts with the use case. What do you want to do? What do you want to get done? There's so many different providers now that offer different solutions. And at the same time, I guess the traditional CPaaS, and I'll let Robert elaborate a little bit on that, the old messaging business is commoditizing, right? That's where the telcos are getting into the play. They're all starting to offer programmable SMS and messaging, etc. Again, after, say, getting rid of it 10 years ago, right? They're all happy to sell their SMS platforms, and that's how MessageBird and CM.com and some of these other guys got formed, right? The telcos were happy to get rid of that useless SMS business. Well, guess what? That's when Jeff and the others came in and said, hey, let's do this a little bit different. There's actually some good money here. So the telcos are getting back in that part. And now we're seeing you need to innovate. If you're a non-telco, you don't have that scale and that mass, and you need to rely on your smarts and offer new solutions and new features and totally new use cases.
Yeah. Robert?
Yeah, and the beautiful thing is we're talking about everybody's offering some portion of CPaaS today. If I'm an enterprise, I'm starting to look locally with who's my telco provider, like Rob mentioned. Odds are they've got some level of APIs that they're either offering today or starting to offer. I can start to layer that in on top of my contact center. My contact center providers, I'm thinking about the use cases that I have. Which contact center provides the best coverage for my use cases? And as I grow over time with the APIs and the bolt-ons from these other providers, I can start to add things in. And we're actually seeing that within, we've got a great example with E&D Enterprise out of the Middle East. They're a telco. They're a CPaaS provider, and they're partnering with all of these other players to create really cool solutions. They've got Bradio that they've brought in that offers WhatsApp and coverage for restaurants. They've got other providers that are delivering video. So I think that picture of yesterday with this monolithic, I've got to choose the perfect CPaaS provider that does all of these things, that's no longer the case, because we can start to bring all these people in. So start to look regionally, know that you're going to grow over time, and think about your use cases first, and then go bit by bit and pick the right solution as you go forward.
All right, good response. So we actually have a little bit of audience participation going on here, which is great. Tim is complaining that we didn't mention WebEx Connect. You can't list every vendor, but because we have audience participation, I'm going to mention WebEx Connect. Cisco acquired IMI Mobile, I guess it was 2 years ago, and that really, really jump-started their contact center business, and that was the key, right? And they're very strong in messaging in general. And then Tim's thrown out a few more comments here. Let's see if anything's worth sharing. You just mentioned this, Robert. Social channels. You just mentioned WhatsApp, I guess is what you mentioned, but it's a nice way to bring that into the mix. And my God, Tim, this is a long one. Oh my God, I don't know if it's on the screen. How about one platform provider that can deliver needed channels? Oh my God, you can't write comments this long. we got a family show here going on. So but anyway, we've got an extraordinary amount, to Tim's point, extraordinary amount of innovation occurring in the space, which brings us to the important question here: what the hell is CPaaS? What is going on here? How many acronyms we got going on here, Mr. Kurver?
Okay, so the CPaaS Acceleration Alliance is really where we bring together the CPaaS players, media, analysts, consultants, telcos, all of them together in one big community. We started this about a year ago. Well, actually, I did start it a little bit early in February 2020. The first meeting was to be in Barcelona. Well, we all know what happened then. So we put it on ice for a little while and started again in earnest last year. And so far in the last 9 or 8 or 10 months, we signed up 65 members. So we're seeing the traditional CPaaS players joining. We're seeing the telcos joining that want to learn more about CPaaS. And we're seeing analysts, influencers, a couple, media partners, everything coming together. Because CPaaS is kind of interesting. Everybody wants to learn more or wants to get the message out. And yeah, I agree. It's an acronym. So we like to call it CPaaS.
Okay, I think to add to that, Robert.
I'll say so. I ran product and marketing at a CPaaS provider, and I like to say that I would have loved to have had this organization back when I was doing this. Right, we had everybody working in their little pockets and trying to come up with their own strategies. And really, as we've pulled this together, it's really awesome to see. We've got CCaaS providers, we've got UCaaS providers, we've got video providers. Everybody's coming together under this umbrella, and we're doing a great job. Really, it's our members that are doing a great job of having conversations about what's working. Where are you seeing traction within the market? And it's really nice to see everybody working together on this piece. And really working to move the industry forward, right? And I think if you look behind the covers at some of our CSP panels and our provider panels, you're seeing players that you would traditionally say are competitors actually talking about what's working and what's not working and learning from each other. It's a really cool atmosphere.
Miguel thinks that SMS is dead. No, that's not what he says at all. He says it still plays an important factor. But actually, I'm amazed at the life of SMS. I remember first hearing about it. I was a college student in America, and it was like all these Europeans are messaging each other. I was like, why would you do that? It makes no sense. And then, of course, America finally caught the flu and did the same thing. It's amazing. SMS just will not go away. And now we're getting a new generation of it with RCS, maybe not. Who knows? Tim is back. Tim thinks CPaaS is a bad name, and I have to agree with him on that one.
Yep.
Are you guys as the alliance? Are you going to change the name of your alliance?
Nope.
Nope. That's it. We're there, huh? Got enough trouble explaining what CPaaS is.
Exactly.
All right.
Yep.
Let's see. Let's see. David here says really feels like the contact center space is getting very fragmented, which is great for the customers, but harder to make a decision. Yeah, that's the paradox of choice.
Can we touch on that real quick?
Sure.
I think we've gotten to a point where contact center in general has really reached parity on features, right? So this thing of making a decision, what are you doing? You're routing calls, you're doing some other things, you're getting them over to agents, and going back to these building blocks that we had talked about. Not thinking about this as a monolithic provider story, but let's get something in to address this need, and then let's know that we can add these other pieces in. And we're seeing some really, really cool use cases come together with one provider doing automation and doing some really slick CX type stuff, and then another provider offering call routing and agent care and feeding and things like that. So I think it's really, really cool where we're at right now.
Yeah, and actually, AI has been such a big thing this year. I think the way CPaaS providers embrace AI and make AI as a service more available, I think is going to be a big part of the conversation going forward. Okay, last question here. This is the big one, the one you've been waiting for. Explain to me, why am I going to Amsterdam next month? Robert.
Actually, I'm gonna, because Rob's in Amsterdam and enjoying the beautiful weather right now.
Looks
Yeah.
pretty nice
I'm gonna
there,
let him
Rob.
do it.
Yeah.
Nice preview.
Yeah,
Where's your
I'm on
bike?
site. I don't have a bike, Dave. I told you that a couple of years ago. I don't own a bike. The last one got stolen, so I got rid of it, or they got rid of it and never replaced it. So no, I'm in Amsterdam right now. I live here, so that's easy to be in Amsterdam. But I'm on the site because we're prepping for this event, which is 4 weeks from now. 3 days of CPaaS and everything associated. So we'll touch on the telco transformation. How are they getting into the play? The AI, of course, but also the role for SME and the channel partners, right? Smaller companies also are trying to catch up on digital transformation. And the UCaaS and CCaaS overlay or evolution that we talked about earlier. Those are the four main themes that came out of our State of CPaaS report earlier this year. So we'll spend 3 days talking about those themes with probably about 250 CPaaS experts, thought leaders, and just people that like to be in Amsterdam that time of year. It's going to be beautiful. We're going to have the best canal tour ever. A great dinner on Tuesday evening, and then Wednesday will be a member-only day where we do some deep dives. We do the working groups and workshops. So it's going to be a really interesting program. We're going to have more than 50 speakers in the 3 days from all over the globe. There'll be a few Dutchmen, but most of them will be from Middle East, APAC, the North Americas, all over Europe. It's going to be exciting. It's a great way to get to learn more about CPaaS, what it means, and why we should change the name, and to meet some interesting people such as us. Robert?
Yeah.
Robert, you mentioned earlier you published some reports, and so tell me more about that. What's this report you mentioned?
Yeah, so it's really we were trying to figure out what CPaaS was earlier on in this session, right?
All you gotta do is watch this video.
Yeah, watch the video, visit our website. But it's really been high time to let's stop talking about APIs and all these other things, but start to bring together. CPaaS is about bringing AI in. It's about enabling large enterprises and small enterprises and bringing your application stack together. So we actually worked with all of the major analysts. We worked with our membership. And brought together not just, hey, what are the speeds and feeds and the features that you think about in CPaaS, but how are people actually making a difference? What are the use cases that they're going after and succeeding with, and how are they commercializing this stuff? And we really wanted to put that lens on the market and show how can companies play a role in getting the industry from where it was $16 billion at the beginning of this year to $100 billion as we look at 2030. Huge opportunities, and there's a role for everybody to play in this market, and that's how we wanted to really frame things up in this report. First of many reports to come here as we look at 2024, and really get some more great stories out of CASA 23, and continue to work with our membership.
All right, we're gonna wrap this up. We've mentioned CASA 23. We mentioned the event. What is the URL? I should have put that down. I'm sorry. What is the URL if you want to register and learn more?
CASA23.amsterdam. We're going really new school with our URLs, but
all right. Well, I'll be there in, I guess you said 4 weeks, Robert. Rob, is that what you said? 4 weeks.
Yeah, 4 weeks.
And next week I'm in Denver, so I'll be talking to Robert in Denver next week. But exciting times ahead, and I want to thank everybody for watching, and thank my two guests here for explaining all this stuff. So with that, we'll call it a wrap. We'll wrap it up.
Thanks,
Thank
Dave.
you.
thanks, Dave.